Hello, I'm here with Jacob of Airworks. So this is a fun one where Jacob was in town and we've been brewing a lot of fantastic coffees here. And I just kind of wanted to give a shout out to what you're doing and also talk about curating coffees just in general. And also talking about curating coffees to these crazy coffee nerds. You've brought some really interesting coffees. So this is actually some of my first time tasting these roasteries here. So for example, we have Big Sur Coffee, we have 43 Coffee, Scenery. So why don't you do a quick intro of who you are and what Airworks is?
Sure, yeah. Hi, I'm Jacob. I run Airworks Coffee. So Airworks Coffee it started as a coffee subscription, but it's kind of more like a web store these days. We do weekly releases from international roasters, as well as having a monthly coffee subscription. Our main focus is bringing in international roasters with a pretty heavy focus on roasters that other people aren't featuring. So we do a lot of sourcing from Asia, a lot from Southeast Asia, and a lot from East Asia, like China, Japan, and Korea. And really just focusing on smaller, more interesting roasters that I haven't seen other companies feature. A lot of the roasters we bring on have never shipped to America or do very limited shipping to America. So it's really the easiest way to try these coffees without flying to that country.
Yeah, and the reason why I wanted to feature Jacob, is because for me, this is actually the first time I've tasted a coffee ever from like these roasteries here.
Yeah.
And of a lot of services that are curating coffee, especially from a subscription format or weekly international coffee releases and drops and all of that, I think what is fascinating to me is your specific focus on regions, where you are really focusing on roasteries from Southeast Asia, China. Not to knock on, places like Japan and Korea, but I feel like I see a lot of Japanese and Korean roasters. Like people think those are like, people love that stuff. There's like a halo effect to it and all of that. But there are so many new roasteries popping up, or maybe they're not even new roasteries, just roasteries that have existed in these regions where, I think like it's the same kind of thing where with you look at like Asian or Southeast Asian coffee consumption or producers where it's only the local guys know that this is the good stuff, right? And now you're taking these really undiscovered, roasters, or they're known in the regions, and you're bringing it out to the world, or really out to here for us in North America. For me, it's like to taste, for example, Big Sur and 43 Coffee here. It's my first time ever tasting these roasters. I'm tasting, I'm like, this is fantastic. And the roasting, for those of you who are more nerds, I think there is a little more focus on the ultralight stuff, right?
Definitely a little bit more ultralight stuff, but I do have a pretty wide spectrum of light roasts, everything from like more developed light roasts, kind of like what you'll see out of Korea and Japan, to more ultralight, super light stuff.
Yeah. But the thing is that you are featuring some of these really smaller operations or really niche roasteries that the volumes are very low, and you're curating the good stuff for people. So especially the coffees that you brought over today, I'm having a great time. As I mentioned, there are a lot of other businesses and other people curating coffees. How did you get into this?
So honestly, the first iteration of Airworks was when I was working as a barista in Seattle. I would just buy a lot of international coffee and share them with different baristas and roasters in the city. So a lot of this was like me doing a lot of this nerdy work, buying from these roasters that didn't ship very much to America. So I had this background in coffee where I lived in Southeast Asia for a couple of years, and I got to try a lot of roasters that I don't think many people in America had tried. And so I wanted to bring those to America and let people try those coffees because I really liked them. And I got a lot of good feedback from people in the industry in Seattle. And so I decided that Airworks would be a good way to bring these roasters to more people around here. That was kind of how this started.
And now you're doing this full time?
Yeah, it's my full-time job.
Wow.
I've just been doing this, only been around for about a year. So this is pretty fresh still, but I've been doing this full-time for the past 3 months, and it's going really well. Yeah.
So how do you buy from Airworks? Or like how does it work? I think that's a good one we should talk about.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I have a couple different ways that you can buy. The main model was a subscription model. So I have 2 different subscriptions. I have a washed only subscription for people who just like clean washed coffees. And then I have the OG subscription, which is like 1 washed coffee, 1 natural, and 1 kind of funkier processed coffee. So that usually it's an anaerobic. Sometimes we get like Indonesian roasters, and we get some really interesting Indonesian coffee in that category. The other way that people can buy from me is I do weekly releases. So it's kind of more like a fellow drop model where everything opens up on Friday at 10 a.m. PST, and then it closes in 12 hours. It's all pre-sale stuff, so it takes like usually 2 weeks to get to you. But that's the other way that people can buy from me without committing to a subscription.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really interesting is that you have like various subs for different preferences of coffee. So, we're at the point where it's like there are preferences in coffee where like, the nerds are like, I only want washed, like please only give me washed, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but yes, there is like dealer's choice too, which is like of the category of coffee, you are curating specific roasters or specific coffees from these roasters for that. How's that been going? When you launched it, I think you are dealing with a very hyper specific type of customer, or somebody who's watching this video. You know who you are.
Yeah, totally. I think when I first started, I kind of cast my net wide. I included a pretty wide range of roasters. I decided that I wanted to focus on more niche things, more light spectrum roasts and more unique roasters. And so the curating has been interesting. So a lot of these roasters, they don't normally ship overseas. So there's a lot of like walking through how we would ship overseas and like getting all the things set up. It's also a little bit harder to get samples curated, samples coordinated and whatnot. But it's been good. I think it's been good. I've had a pretty good my customer base is pretty picky, but I've had pretty good reception for most of the coffees I bring on.
Yeah, because so like you get sent the coffee and then you essentially ship it out, but you'll like assemble packages specific for your subs and all of that. But you're getting a bunch of coffees from all these different roasteries at the same time, and the coffees they come in the bags like this, right?
Yeah. So I originally repackaged, but a lot of my customers told me that they weren't interested in that and they would much prefer the original bags. So we do go with the original bags. Some roasters will pack in like slightly different bags for like the smaller sizes. Like if they normally do 250 grams, I do have a 100-gram option. So sometimes they'll pack in a smaller bag for that, but it's all packed by the roaster. We really just want to showcase everything about the roaster and give people bags and stuff they can collect and whatnot.
Yeah. So when you started, you were doing this out of your apartment, and now how's that looking? I mean, it's only been a year, which is also crazy. It's really fast.
It's been super fast. Yeah, I've been really lucky. Found a really good group of customers. I'm very happy about that. So this started in my apartment. This was a very tiny operation. I'm living in downtown Seattle. My apartment's like 800 square feet, and I have 2 kids. So it's a lot. And I very recently, 2 months ago, signed a lease on a small space in Seattle. It's just a garage downtown that I run some like weird nerdy coffee events out of. But I'm very happy to have my own space now. It's been a lot easier since I got the new space. I have more room to set up. I don't have to take everything down at night when my kids go to sleep. It's been a lot easier.
Yeah. So like, your house is not filled with coffee, or is it still filled with coffee?
I think I take up maybe a quarter of the house with coffee, just lying in piles. My wife would kill me if I had more than that.
Yeah, but I think like still what is just really interesting is the curation aspect. So what is actually your curation approach? Like, you are curating based on roasters and like the size of some of these roasters, because I think what you we can talk about this a little bit more, some of my personal experiences with this, but is that when you build a subscription and you have like all these subs, like there is a limited amount of coffee. It's like some of these coffees are like literally only 10 kilos that exist in the world, right? And if you have all these customers, like how are you navigating that?
It's been interesting. The way I work with roasters is I do deep dives to find different roasters, and then I have a long list of roasters that I go through. I ask for samples, I try their coffees. A lot of this is actually user-generated feedback, so a lot of the people I bring on were suggested by customers. A lot of the changes I implemented my site in general were suggested by customers. And then when we get to the actual subscription, a lot of the roasters will have enough of the coffee for the subscription, but in general, it's me buying out their entire supply of a certain coffee. I bring on a couple different coffees, so usually if they have somewhat smaller numbers, we'll get 2 similar coffees and like have it split between the two. That has happened occasionally. But in general, it's just coordinating with roasters. So like, for example, the roaster I'm working with for this next release is Light Coffee out of South Korea. and they had very small numbers available. So we went to the green buyers that were local to them, and we selected coffee for the subs in quantities that would work for us. So it's kind of specific to the roaster. Each roaster has different things. Each country that I source from has different ways that they buy coffee. Some countries have really large lots. Some countries have really small lots. So it depends on a lot of factors.
Yeah, but you are doing diligence, and you are actually going very deep into even talking with producers, like, and finding roasters and all of that. So I think that's also what's really interesting, is that you will find very specific collaborations, like an Airworks drop, for example. Like you did one locally with our friends at Hydrangea.
Yeah,
but it's like doing that extra work. Like, you're not just picking a coffee and, oh, I'll just buy it, right? You're going deeper and investigating, and making that connection, that deeper connection with the roaster, but also the producer themselves. And I think that's like what's really fascinating, is that there is this more personalized curation, or deeper curation from the curator, which I think is rarer nowadays. I think I see, like, it's just how it is. Especially if you want to get some of these super specific coffees. Like, I think you've had some really interesting coffees from like Thailand and all of that. And it's like, that is a very limited quantity of coffee, and establishing that deeper relationship with the roaster and producer lets you get access to that coffee.
100%. Yeah, I try to build these personal relationships with roasters. I try to bring on unique coffees to them. Like, a while back, I brought on a coffee from Livid out of Thailand, and we brought on a couple different Thai coffees just because I really wanted to like showcase those coffees to America. I think in Asia specifically, there's some really good coffee that doesn't make it outside of Asia all that often. So that's something that I like to focus on when I can. And for this release specifically, they sent me pictures that they took with the producer. And like, we had a little video chat about how excited they were to have their coffee shown to an American audience, because they didn't think that was something that was possible for them.
The exposure that you're doing for these roasters is what's really awesome. Is that, like, at least for me, I feel like I'm very jaded now in my coffee experience. Like, oh, I only like this type of coffee and this type of roastery, and these are the people I like. I like that you, even for somebody like me and these like crazy nerds, you are still showing like what is possible. Like, this is really fascinating, and all these different roasteries. And I think, like, as you dive deeper in your coffee journey, and if you are a customer who is even exploring curated subscriptions, you want the like super interesting either coffees or roasters, and either it's like a process or a coffee you've never heard of, or a roastery you've never heard of. And if you live in North America, there's all this that we just never see. So it's really nice to be able for you to expose those roasteries and show them, like, hey, there are weird people like me who will go and buy these coffees.
Yeah, for sure. Like, for Big Sur specifically, they told me that they had a huge increase in American people reaching out to them directly and asking if they could buy their coffee. It showed like a huge. Both of these roasters have gotten a very large American support from the releases we did. And I love focusing on regions that don't get the spotlight as much. Like, Japan's got great coffee, sure. But in my opinion, China has the best coffee scene in the world right now. And you really don't see people focusing on their coffees.
Like, if I wanted to buy this single bag of coffee, I have to actually jump through like a million different hoops. Either I have to get like, you have to buy, there's like a minimum quantity for them to ship it to you, right? So the nice thing about doing something through Airworks is that, it's like effectively like a larger group buy, if you think about it, right? But totally. He takes care of all of the painful part of it all, which is like packaging things and shipping it out to people. So that's like a big selling point, is if you do want to even try these roasters, you can easily, more easily get them through you, especially if you're in North America, right?
For sure.
So you're now shipping to Canada as well?
Yep, just started shipping to Canada. So that is a new thing starting in August.
Okay, it's just a great way, like, for you, the consumer, to try these coffees, but also for these roasters and even producers. You go that deep to get their coffee out there, right? And I think that's still the thing with coffee, is that it's still taste. It's like you need to have people try these coffees and see what it's like. I do now want to shift gears a little and talk about curation of coffee. So I think what's fascinating to have you here is that you have currently you have a very hyper specific, focused group of enthusiasts and nerds and these types of people who want to go for these types of coffees or like these types of roasteries. And I have a perspective of curating coffee for a broader audience, and I think it's really interesting to see like the behavior between the two groups. So, how would you say like I think people who are into these types of coffees who only want this style of coffee, they're hardcore. They're also I don't want to say difficult, but they have very specific preferences, right? And I think that's why you have like a wash coffee sub, right?
Yes, it started very much because a lot of the coffee nerds on Discord specifically were adamant about wanting more washed coffees. And really there's not a lot of subscriptions that were offering a washed only subscription. And so that's why I leaned into that. I like all coffees. I like having diversity, but my preferences are for more washed coffees in general. So I liked having that option as well.
Yeah.
But yes, that one was strictly for the nerds.
Yeah. But like even curating for those types of nerds, like I think when you get to this type of coffee, like especially the ultralight coffees, like, you know, we have this coffee from 43 and it says extremely light, right? And it's very light. Yeah. It was really tasting fantastic when we were brewing it. Yeah. Is that like these coffees get harder to brew, like in my opinion, right? Yeah. Like have you had to deal with people who are like, oh, this one wasn't any good, or like what has that been like?
I've definitely dealt with a couple of people who, in efforts to expand to different people, I think some of the people who don't normally drink these kinds of coffees had trouble with them. I also did some sourcing for cafes in Seattle, and the baristas struggled to dial them in and talked about kind of just difficulties with that. So part of it, I've talked individually one-on-one with people and like kind of gave them tips for things. I try to give like brewing tips and whatnot for these coffees too, but it takes a little bit of skill, I think, to brew some of these coffees. Like 43 Cafe, you need to know what you're looking for with that. It's maybe not as beginner friendly.
You're more like deeper if you're really looking for this type of stuff. I am actually curious though, like if you are featuring newer regions like for example Southeast Asia, Thailand, and all of that, like have you had people who are into like the clean wash stuff try the crazy like, you know, new Thailand stuff? I'm just curious.
I think, so there's a definite sect of my customers that will never drink anything that's not washed. Like, that's just what they do. But I think a pretty, like the middle group of people are interested in trying anything unique. And that's kind of where I put myself.
Yeah.
If it's a unique and interesting coffee, I want to try it. And so kind of because of that, I think I definitely have people who mostly like washed coffees, but will try some really interesting Indonesian coffees and still enjoy it. So part of the way that I kind of sell to people who might be skeptical of those processes is I usually offer dime bags of it. Okay. So like 30-gram sample bags.
Yeah, try it out.
So that way people don't have to commit to a full bag. There's been like plenty of coffees that I'm like, I want to try this, but I don't want more than like 3 or 4 cups of it.
Right.
So that's kind of who I was selling to. Just honestly started as a meme on Discord, but I kept it up.
Yeah, but it's like that's the thing with coffee is that it's you have to taste. You have to try, right? Because I do think that a lot of coffee consumers, like this is just in general, like you're buying based on flavor notes. If you're at the high end, you're buying based on process and roaster. But like there are a lot of things, even when you're reading processing, that is not really ever, like it's not communicated to you until you taste it, right? Like it could say it's washed and you taste it and you're like, I don't know what's going on. Or you look at nowadays, like this coffee from Scenery, which is, you know, 144 hours, carbonic, red, CM red washed. I have no idea what is happening here, right? It's a lot of words.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But you taste it and it's like, it's actually clean. Expressive, clean, right? 100%. You know, clean in the context of the processing, right? Yeah. But that's the thing is that like even for you to take and expose those newer regions to like the guys who are like very, you know, set in their ways, as we'd say, that's really fantastic. And kind of in like my experience of building like coffee marketplaces and subscriptions, all of that is like I see the same type of experience with like people who are at the beginning of their coffee journey, where people are like very the like the dark roast drinkers. They I only want to drink the same blend. I if you change the blend, people get really mad. But exposing them to like what else is out there is, I think, what's really, really fascinating about coffee. The most interesting about coffee is still like the flavor expression, is that like you get so many different types of flavor profiles through this weird fruit, right? You don't know what people like anymore, especially even when you get into like the more faster paced curation aspect of like, okay, we'll have weekly drops. Sometimes people will want the wash coffee, then the next week they hate the wash coffee. And I could imagine this, even in a wash coffee subscription, sometimes people love it and they'll hate it.
Oh yeah, no, totally. It's like, oh, I love this representation of the coffee, or oh, I don't like the way the roast brought out something, or I don't like something inherent to the green. But I think with any subscription, it's about trying different things.
Yeah.
And I think that my subscribers who even are more set in their ways are happy to try new things.
Yeah. And I think like a big part of that is still because of the accessibility to you. Like the fact that you can just DM this guy is like pretty good, right? He is getting you those coffees, and what you can do is you say, hey, oh yeah, like, can you maybe feature more of this roaster or this type of process and all of that. And like, that's what's been really nice is if you're a sub, you do kind of have a say and you get to try a lot of these different coffees. I think what's interesting, like an example of like preferences is, so like this Big Sur coffee, which I would classify as like an ultralight or whatever we deem is ultralight now. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very, very light coffee.
On the spectrum of ultralight.
Yeah. Is that this is my first time ever trying this roaster, and I was like, wow, this is like very fruit forward. It does have that like ultra light style presentation. You do have to like kind of push it a little bit harder in brewing, but I could see like the specifically in those like ultra light crowds, some people not liking this coffee where they're like, oh, it's not floral enough. And then I have the vice versa effect of somebody who was like, oh, it's like, I want the fruit, right? And like in this ultralight area, it's like, I think there's a lot of guys who either they want super floral and tea-like coffees, and vice versa. It's like, I don't know anymore.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. This one definitely got a lot of mixed feedback, with some people really loving their style. I really love their style.
Yeah.
These are one of my favorite roasters I've worked with. But a lot of people in that ultralight crowd didn't like the presentation because it was more fruit forward. I think it was interesting because in that same month I had both of these roasters actually, which I think present their coffee very differently. And I had two different camps for who liked who more. This one's going to be more tea-like. It's going to be more floral and like clarity focused, whereas this is a lot more fruit forward, a lot more acidity forward, while also still being a very light roast.
Yeah.
And so like they're completely different, but also in that same spectrum of like roast profile. And so some people would be like, oh, I hated Big Sur, but I loved 43 Cafe, or vice versa. And it was interesting. I really like trying things that are in the same realm of like roast profile or like similar green, but like slightly different variations of that to like find the nuances between the two.
Yeah. And I think it's fascinating to hear that, because like I think a lot of your customers are like at the tippy top of like you're like very very deep in there. Whereas like even like the marketplace I do some curation for, like on a super fast curated sub, is that I find a lot of customers like clean expressive. So like either really cleanly processed coffee, like this 43 coffee where it's like it's super clean, but it is actually quite loud, like a wash coffee that's very, very loud. Or they like, high fermentation, but like it's cleanly fermented, so it's perceivable. So it's like super interesting to see like the preferences, and so many like people are very vocal about their preferences. They'll email you or they'll DM you and be like, this one was good. But I think like I think that's what's like fun about all of this, is that the fact that there are so many preferences in coffee, and also even down to how you brew is like such a like we can present these coffees in so many different ways. That's just like a fun little discussion I want to throw in there. What's kind of like next for Airworks? Like,
so the next thing for Airworks, we are branching into Canada. That was our most recent new thing. Other than that, we opened a pour over only kind of speakeasy in Seattle.
Okay.
It's in a garage in Seattle. It's like, my local friends call it the coffee dungeon. It's very much like an anti-aesthetic cafe, but we do like some really high quality tastings and stuff that just don't exist in Seattle. So that's part of the branching out that I'm doing. On Airworks specifically, I'm going to be doing some more sales of like merch and like get some drippers in there, get some filters, just kind of different stuff. But that's kind of where we're headed. Getting some more unique. We got some pretty interesting collabs coming up soon. We got some really interesting focus on roasters.
Yeah. We will probably do a collab on, especially for those of you in the Discord, a very specific collab. We'll announce that at a later time. Yeah, that if you know, hopefully things go through for that one. Because you know, like with working with someone like Jacob, it's like we're going deep. Where you know we're trying to get the producer to do stuff with a roaster all the way to there, and then I'm just happy to always feature interesting coffees, and especially people who are trying to do entrepreneurial projects in coffee. And the fact that you've been able to make this your full time is crazy. And like I think that's like why I want to put this out there, is that I find with this coffee stuff, like you really gotta go deep, you gotta go full time and commit to like really pull off something in this industry at least.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was doing this part time while also being a barista full time, and that was too much work. I'm very happy to be focusing entirely on what I'm doing. I can do a lot more with it.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to show off today is I'm just really happy to have Jacob over. We were just brewing these coffees. They were tasting fantastic, and this is just at least these coffees and these roasters. Just it's a taste of what you can get. So feel free to check out his website and Instagram and all of that. I would encourage you all to at least try it out. Try and subbing and seeing the expression of roasters and roasting styles and coffees and all of that. I think it'll be a really great way to learn about coffee, and a lot of coffee and everything we're talking about is communicated through taste. So somebody who is curating these fantastic coffees from these roasteries in these newer regions is amazing, and I really wanted to highlight that. So I hope you all check that out, and I want to thank Jacob for coming over here and bringing these coffees, and thank you for also being on camera as well.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yeah, but otherwise, thank you so much. Stay tuned for our future collab that we're working on, and we'll see you around.
Thank you.
But thank you. All right.